Good morning to all our viewers across the Tri-Island state of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. To all our viewers in the diaspora, a special good morning to you as well. And of course, our media colleagues who are joining us on Zoom, good morning. Welcome all to this morning's post-cabinet press briefing. We're happy that you are joining us this morning, whether you're tuning in via Channel 22 or on our live stream on Facebook or YouTube. We're happy to have you with us this morning. My name is Tahira Carter. I'm the press secretary for the government of Grenada, and joining us for this morning's post-cabinet press briefing, we have the Honorable Dickon Mitchell, Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, National Security, Home Affairs, Public Administration, Information and Disaster Management. To his right, we have the Honorable Philip Telesford, Minister for Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs, and to his left, Mr. Mike Sylvester, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance. Without further ado, Honorable Prime Minister, I hand over to you.
Thank you, Tahira, and pleasant good morning to all of our viewers, listeners, as well as members of the media. With me is my colleague, Minister Telesford. Minister Telesford will provide some updates as it relates to housing repair program that the Ministry of Housing intends to roll out shortly, and as it relates to the National Insurance Scheme. So, Minister Telesford.
Thank you, Prime Minister, and good morning to the press and everyone, and to all our listeners. Greetings. Now, I am happy to be able to advise the general public that as of September 1st, the housing repair and bathroom construction projects have recommenced. So you can expect to see our officers coming around in your communities, assessing what is needed to be done and taking action accordingly. We are aware that there is quite a number of units that is outstanding as we speak. Some houses that needs repair, bathroom and toilet to be constructed. We have every name, every list. Everyone is included. That was, of course, those of you who would have made applications before, we have your information. What we wish to do at this stage is to continue the process of evaluating those who have made such applications. Because key to what we're doing is the fact that we do not want to continue along the route of wastage. We want to ensure that when we deliver materials to homes for people to have their homes constructed, that the materials are immediately put to use and that they are not held under somebody's home to rotten or to be sold off, but to be used for its correct purpose. We also believe that those who really do need help should receive the help from government, and we are doing all in our power to ensure that that happens. I know the process was slowed down or stopped to some extent for a period of time. We apologize to the general public for that, but we believe that it was a necessary intervention in order to ensure that the program is being administered correctly and those in need actually receive such assistance. I now branch over quickly to the NIS. We have met with the new board, and again, all of this is part of a process, the installation of a board, examining where we at, and taking action to ensure that the best decisions are being made and the safety and security of these institutions are given top priority. So we have met with the board, the new board appointed, and we have come to the understanding that serious intervention is needed if we have to secure a pension for the population in a not too distant future. As we speak, the National Insurance Scheme, or the board of the NIS, have made numerous submissions to the previous government for certain interventions, for certain actions, by way of legislative changes and strengthening to ensure that we have a sustainable NIS and that the pensions that would be payable at some stage to employees is secured. What we've noticed is that a lot of these recommendations are still in its embryonic stage of recommendations. Cabinet approved, but no further steps taken in order to ensure that the proper changes have been made. So we have reviewed all of that and have come to the conclusion that immediate intervention and careful intervention has to be administered in order to save the NIS for the future of our beloved nation. So I just want to point out a few of them. The Public Finance Management Act. That act conflicts with the NIS Act and therefore require some measure of legislative intervention. That we put in on the front burner also. Increase in pensionable age, I'll come back to that shortly. Employment, injury, disqualification clause within the NIS Act. That needs some modification because as it is right now, if we're not careful, we can just be promoting the wrong things, all right? So I think we need to pay attention to that. It's an important piece of legislation, important change, but it is a necessary change. Amendment to the survivors' benefit regulation. Again, as far as children is concerned, the present situation is very, very awkward for those in the NIS. For example, if there is a child who was not living with that parent, especially the father, when after he would have passed, the NIS would have to go into the village, try to find out from the villagers whether or not daddy used to be actually minding the child, when was the last time he came, what did he bring, and get very intrusive in trying to determine whether or not this child really should qualify for a benefit. That kind of verification will not be necessary if the proper legislative change is made. And so again, that is something that we believe needs to happen. So I don't want to go, we have maybe just about another 5 or so that changes that has to be made. So I'm just saying that there are a few things that has to happen in order to secure the longevity of the scheme and to ensure that there is indeed a pension for the next generation of Grenadians. So I just want to go back quickly on the retirement age because I believe it's absolutely necessary. As a matter of fact, that is the thing that is causing the biggest worry for those who govern the NIS at this time. From the 7th actuarial review back in 2004 to present, every single time the actuary requested that the retirement age be amended. So over the last 18 years or so, the recommendation has been made for the amendment of the retirement age. Apart from Cabinet agreeing, there has not been a change to the law to ensure that that critical shift is made. As a consequence, the question is, where is the NIS now? The NIS presently is breaking deposits to pay pensioners because the inflows, the income from the payment of NIS dues is less than the benefits that is paid out under the NIS Act. So, notwithstanding that we have a very youthful population, we are still at this stage paying out more than we collect. So every year, NIS has to be breaking deposits to facilitate the payment of pensions to retirees. That is unsustainable. As a matter of fact, if the NIS were to continue like this, within the next 10 years or so, there will be no NIS. We have looked at information from throughout the region, and we recognize that Grenada is behind when it comes to legislative changes to the scheme. Grenada needs to do what is necessary at this stage to shift the retirement age gradually from age 60 to 65. That recommendation was made several times since 2004 by the actuary until now. So we are at an alarming state. Yeah? Changes are absolutely necessary in the legislation to facilitate this. Instructively, only this year, I think it was April this year, the unions wrote to government expressing grave concern that the government did not act on the change of legislation relative to the retirement age. The unions. The Public Service Commission indicated to government that they too are willing to change their law, to make the recommendation for the change of the law to facilitate the retirement age change. Yet, the government failed to act. So, we believe that the time is upon us, and it's urgent that we must act now to save the NIS if we have to depend on a pension for the next 10 years or so. The time is now. So I want to rest here and turn back to PM. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister Telesford, for your remarks. And I think the remarks in relation to NIS are of profound importance. And so I want to assure the public first that the recommendations that the Honorable Minister refers to when he says they were made to government, just to be clear, they were made to the prior administration. And no action was taken. This government intends to act, and we intend to act quickly, which is why we brought the matter to the public's attention, because we recognize we cannot kick the can down the road any further. The National Insurance Scheme is staring bankruptcy in its face if we do not take the necessary corrective measures to ensure that the fund is put on a sustainable path. And the fact that the major players in this arrangement, the unions, the Public Service Commission, has indicated their willingness to support the changes and have called upon the prior administration to act is testimony of the fact that we are partly in this situation because of the past failure to act, and we cannot continue like this, and we need to take the necessary actions. So we can assure the public that we will do so. We will have the necessary public education and consultation that is required to sensitize the public about what needs to be done, but we certainly will be doing it. So, Minister, thank you very much for the update. I want to address a couple of matters this morning. First, I want to indicate to the public that Her Excellency the Governor General will be traveling tomorrow for at least 1 week to attend the state funeral of Her Excellency Queen Elizabeth. As the public is aware, Queen Elizabeth died last Thursday, and she is still, or was still, our sovereign, and we're still members of the Commonwealth, and so invitations were extended to heads of state to attend. So Her Excellency will be doing so. She will be accompanied in the UK by Grenada's resident High Commissioner, Ms. Keisha Grant. I will not be attending the event because of prior arrangements. Speaking of prior arrangements, I also will be traveling on Wednesday. Before I say so, let me confirm that the President of the Senate, Ms. Decima Williams, will act in the absence of the Governor General while she's out of state. I also will be traveling on Wednesday, first to Jamaica to attend the 84th annual conference of the PNP party, that's the opposition party. I had been invited several weeks ago and had committed to attending to be the guest speaker at that event. So I will be traveling on Wednesday. The event is Thursday, and I leave Jamaica on Friday morning to travel to the United States to attend the United Nations General Assembly meetings, which takes place in the upcoming week. Accompanying me on my travel will be the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Honorable Joseph Andel, who will travel on Saturday, together with a delegation from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It is expected that I will deliver my maiden speech at the General Assembly. The tentative date for doing so is next Saturday, but those dates are subject to change generally, and in light of the funeral of Her Majesty in the UK, it is expected that several heads of government would be attending that funeral, and that would potentially impact the schedule at the United Nations General Assembly as well. In my absence from the state, the Honourable MP for St. Patrick East, Honourable Dennis Cornwall, will act as Prime Minister in my stead. So those are what I will call housekeeping matters. I will now turn to some substantive matters. The first relates to, at the last post-cabinet conference, we indicated that we were taking the submission to Cabinet for approval to cap the freight rates at 2019 for a period of 6 months. I am happy to report that Cabinet has in fact approved the submission, and so effective as of the 1st of October 2020 for a period of 6 months in the first instance, freight rates on goods being imported into Grenada will be capped and calculated at the freight rates which existed in 2019. The Ministry of Finance and the Customs Department will sensitize members of the public, importers, brokers, etc., as to what is required to be done administratively to facilitate the correct entry of the appropriate freight rates. And Pierre Sylvester, who's here with me this morning, may take any questions that you may have on this specific initiative. We intend to review this at the end of, or by the end of March 2023, as to whether it's kept in place or as to whether any further indulgences will be granted in terms of further capping of the freight rate. The second issue I wish to address is the question of the cap on fuel prices at the pumps. As you are aware, the prior administration had put in place a cap on fuel prices at $15 per gallon at the fuel pump. The net effect of this is that the government is now owing the suppliers of fuel close to, if not more than, $1 million, because in effect the real price of gasoline, diesel, etc. is not being passed on to consumers. And in addition to that, the government has been waiving the petrol tax that is normally associated with the consumption of fuel. both of those measures are unsustainable in the current context. The government simply cannot afford to continue not collecting the tax and at the same time finding itself in a position where it has to pay the petrol suppliers. So the Cabinet has taken the decision, one, to continue with the removal of petrol tax as of the next price change. The next price change is the 18th of September, and so we will continue not collecting petrol tax from the 18th of September 2022 until the 31st of December 2022. However, we anticipate that the price per gallon of fuel will drop beneath $15. We expect to have confirmation of that within the next 24 to 48 hours, and certainly before the 18th of September. If that happens, we will remove the cap, the $15 cap, because there will be no need for it. If the price per gallon drops beneath $15, we will remove the cap because there will be no need for the cap. That should allow us to begin stopping the bleeding, so to speak, in terms of the sums that we are beginning to accumulate and which is owing to the suppliers. We will monitor the situation on a month-by-month basis. Should the price per gallon begin to trend upwards, and should it get to a point where, again, it becomes difficult for our citizens to pay, we will then look at reinstituting the cap. For now, we are going to gauge, as an indication, somewhere around $17 per cap. So we can assure the public that should the price per gallon go back to at least $17 per gallon, then we will reinstitute a cap at $17. But in the meantime, the indications are that the price per gallon is likely to trend down. If that happens, and if we have confirmation of this fact in the next 24 hours or so, then the cap will be removed by the 18th of September. We will obviously review this policy in December, particularly the policy as it relates to the petrol tax, because essentially the government has not collected any petrol tax revenue for the entirety of 2022. And prior to that, petrol tax was a significant revenue earner for the government of Grenada. The government is also considering other measures to ease the cost of living. Specifically, we are going to review, in consultation with the public, supermarkets, shopkeepers, and consumers in general, a list of items that we will consider either having a reduced rate of VAT on or the complete removal of VAT. The aim is to use the next 2 weeks to conduct this review, and subject to what the analysis shows, we will then come back to the public as to whether or not we will proceed with a submission to Cabinet to either zero rate or to reduce the VAT rate on certain food items, in particular sanitary and hygiene items and cleaning items. So we will provide a further update in relation to those matters. Cabinet has also taken the decision to discontinue the 25% discount on the non-fuel charge associated with electricity supply by GRENLEC. As I had indicated at the prior press conference, GRENLEC has been losing significant revenue as a result of the 25% discount on the non-fuel charge. As of yesterday evening, the figure that had been provided to me was in the region of $16 million. That has had a very negative impact on the cash flow of GRENLEC and on its ability to meet its commitments as they in fact fall due. In the circumstances, this particular aspect of the prior stimulus package, as difficult as the decision is not sustainable, and we cannot risk jeopardizing the financial stability of GRENLEC by continuing with this stimulus package, with this part of the stimulus package. So the discount will be discontinued based on GRENLEC's billing cycle, as it bills 30 days in arrears, and then you have another 30 days to pay the bill. The impact, if any, would probably be felt from around November of this year. We, however, are going to look at alternative measures to cushion the impact, particularly for customers who consume less than or up to 100 kilowatt hours per month. The statistics provided by GrenLec suggest that there are as many as 15,000 accounts. Some persons may have more than one account, but roughly it probably does equate to around 15,000 households or other small businesses. So we would look to see what measures that can be taken from the government's perspective to cushion the impact from the removal of the 25% discount on the non-fuel aspect of electricity. We are hopeful that if the fuel prices of electricity continues to trend downwards, that eventually we will also see a downward trend in the cost of electricity. We are mindful, and we've heard of the many cries by persons as to the high cost of electricity. But we also have to be honest with the population. To a large extent, the cost of electricity is determined by the price of fuel. And we all know that worldwide, the price of fuel has gone up significantly, partly because of the Russian-Ukrainian war and the general inflation that the world has been experiencing over the last several months. So we as consumers of energy and consumers of electricity also need to take steps to mitigate and lessen our consumption. And I think there are basic things that we all know that we need to do, such as turning off our lights, unplugging electronic devices that do not need to be plugged in, etc., to make sure that we can minimize our consumption and lessen on the amount of money that we have to spend on electricity. I wish to just provide a general update on GrenLec, because I'm sure many consumers have, like myself, observed the more frequent power outages that have been happening. GrenLec has indicated that is mainly because one of its main engines has, in the last several months or so, been experiencing some technical glitches that has led to the engine going out. Particularly over the weekend, I think last Friday, for example, one of the engines was down for overhaul, and that particular engine also tripped and went out. That engine is in fact it is GrenLec's newest engine, which was purchased in 2021. As we stand, it is still under warranty, and the technicians from the supplier, in fact the technician is on island, looking to address the servicing issues or whatever other issues that may apply to the engine. That having been said, the general report from GrenLec indicates that significant investment will be needed into the company if it is to continue to meet the demand and the growth in demand for electricity. That is something that has to be dealt with urgency, because as the economy continues to grow, as the construction continues to grow, and particularly the growth in the tourism sector, as you're aware, there are several new hotels that are under construction currently, some of which are scheduled to be completed in 2023 and 2024. It means GrenLec will have to be in a position to meet that demand. For it to be able to meet that demand, its generating capacity needs to grow. It is clear, based on the initial reports that have been provided to me, that the prior administration did not pay any attention to this. There is, in fact, no strategic plan, particularly to deal with the growth in demand and for GrenLec to be in a position to meet the generating capacity that it needs in order to meet that growth in demand. So our administration is keen to ensure that GrenLec is in a position to do so, and therefore the mandate to the board is to, in fact, provide the government with a comprehensive plan for how GrenLec intends to address meeting the generating needs of the society over the short, medium, and long term. There are other issues that we need to address, which we intend doing so in the several months, including the role of the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission and its relationship with GrenLec and the individual, particularly solar producers on island. As it stands, the situation is not satisfactory. We've received several complaints from individual persons who've invested in solar plants about the bureaucracy and the cumbersome nature when they attempt, first of all, to connect to the grid and to deal with the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission. So we will be conducting a comprehensive review of the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission to determine whether there is a need at all for the legislation in the first place. Since we only have one power company, And effectively, with the government now being the majority shareholder of that entity, you essentially have one government entity regulating another government entity, and frankly making life difficult for a lot of the individual solar producers on island who've taken their money to invest in alternative and renewable energy. And as you're aware, the government's policies, in fact, encourage as much as we can renewable energy. So where individual citizens have taken the lead in investing in renewable energy, we should be encouraging and applauding them and not making their lives difficult. So those are the items that I wish to address this morning. We are open for any questions that the media may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister and Minister Telesford, for these important updates. Now, as the Prime Minister just mentioned, we are going to open now to question and answer segment to our media colleagues. I just want to let you know that we will be trying our best this morning to keep the briefing to 1 hour. We do want to allow our ministers to get to their scheduled appointments following this briefing. So as is customary, I ask that you please keep your questions to 2, and so that we can give all of our media colleagues a chance to get their questions into the panel. So if you would raise your hand on the Zoom chat, I see that GBN already has their hand raised. GBN, you may go ahead. The floor is yours.
Good morning to everyone. I'm Rena P. Thomas from GBN. First, I have questions for Minister Telesford. Minister Telesford, regarding the housing repair, can you tell us if the workers would be the same workers that would be part of the program? And is the arrangements with them the same? Or has that changed? And I'm going to ask you also about the Chinese housing project. I know that you're meeting, or you and the Prime Minister is meeting with carpenters and stuff. Could you give us an update on that? And is that relating to refurbishing some of the apartments to make it more ready for a family?
Thank you, Rena. All right. So some of the workers will be the same. I think it is good to advise you that the contracts for those coordinators expired at the end of June, at the 30th of June, and only some of them expressed interest in continuing. So in that case, we had to find additional people to continue. We also took, as I mentioned before, a hard look at what was happening in the system with a view to saving as much as possible and ensuring that materials get to those who really do need it. And we recognize that in some areas there has been some serious wastage. As a matter of fact, as we speak, an audit is being conducted, because of the amount of wastage that we have seen. So some of the people, even if they wanted to renew the contract, because of what we have seen, we may wish not to receive such or to renew such contracts. Okay. From the housing unit's point of view, the process is open again as at the 1st of September, so people can apply now for housing units across the island. They can apply. The process is open. We have a committee in place who will review these applications. And I want to assure the public that there is not a single politician on that committee, right? So no minister at all is on the committee, so they will review the applications, and hopefully they would complete their work by the end of October and allow us to be able to, or allow the ministry, so to speak, to begin the process of assigning the homes to the respective applicants.
You didn't answer my question regarding the meetings with the carpenters. I know there was a release out stating that Prime Minister wanted to meet with the carpenters and stuff in the area, and that we had an open house for the housing project. So that is what I really wanted to get something on. What exactly is the meeting about with the carpenters and other construction workers? Is that regarding previous announcement that there would be some, or there may be some retrofitting in the apartments to make it more ready?
All right, thank you, Rena. I'll take that question. The meeting is set for, I think, 5 or 5:30 this afternoon at the affordable or low-income housing complex built by the under the auspices of the Republic of China. And I want to take the opportunity to thank the people and President Xi Jinping of China for the assistance given to the government and people of Grenada with the housing projects. As MP for St. David's, and in that capacity, I have asked to meet with persons who are tradesmen, contractors, building, repair, construction contractors in St. David's in general. And I've asked to meet at that site for 2 reasons. One, I want persons in St. David to be able to get the opportunity to actually see what the units are like. It is one thing to tell people to apply for units, but as we say in Grenada, you don't want to buy cat and bag. And so I think it's only fair for our citizens, starting with persons who are tradesmen and skillsmen, to actually see what the units look like. Notwithstanding that we are aware that several people have already expressed interest and have applied. So that's the starting point. We want to be able to. So it's not just, this is starting with tradesmen, but the Ministry of Housing intends, in fact, to have further open houses to give citizens the opportunity to see what the units look like, first and foremost. Second, the Minister of Housing has reported, based on inspections of the units, and in particular the newer units, that the agreement with the Republic of China was that the units would be delivered in the state they were delivered in, to a large extent, which means that they are not necessarily ready for inhabitation. Meaning, for instance, you don't have kitchen fixtures, cabinetry, closets, etc. It is our obligation as the government of Grenada to ensure that if we are providing affordable housing to our citizens, that the affordable housing is provided in a manner that allows the citizens to use them. And so to that extent, there probably will be a need for retrofitting, and there will be a need, well, retrofitting is probably not the appropriate word, but there probably will be a need for enhancing the units so that they are made more comfortable and more ready for inhabitation. If that is in fact the case, it means we will need to be able to get tradesmen, carpenters, masons, plumbers, electricians to assist us with that process. So part of the reason for the meeting is, in fact, within the context of St. David, and we will probably roll that out throughout the other constituencies, is to get a database of who our contractors are. We don't have that. We don't know who our masons, who our carpenters, who are electricians, who are plumbers, and we need to be able to get a database, be able to identify them so that for future purposes we can rely on them, we can use them. When we need to ask them to volunteer to help the community, they can volunteer to help the community, etc. And it's not just for the housing project. I'll give an example. The St. David's Roman Catholic School, which is the school I went to, had to be repaired and is under repairs currently. In order for the students of that school to start school on the 1st of September, alternative accommodation had to be made for them. The only reason alternative accommodation was successful is because the residents of St. David volunteered to find a space, which was the community center, and to clean the community center up and to make it readily available. It required painting, cleaning, electrical work, plumbing work, etc. If we don't have a database of persons in the community who have that skill set, and I'm placing on record my appreciation and thanks to the residents of St. David's for doing so, it basically meant that our students in that school were probably going to have to be home still. And so we need to be able to have data that tells us who has the skill set to do the things we need to do. Many of our schools are in, particularly our primary schools, are in terrible conditions. They probably would be in better conditions if we had the data that told us who lived in the community, what their skill set were, so that we could readily find them to assist with repairs and renovations and maintenance, many of whom I'm sure would be prepared to volunteer to do so. But if we can't contact them, if we can't find them, and if we don't know who they are, then we will not be able to utilize them. So part of one of the main reasons for, in fact, meeting with the contractors is to collect information about them, to be able to get from them their sense and their own views about how we address things like housing in our communities, because housing and the state of our housing is a major challenge for all Grenadians. And the minister hasn't given you statistics, but I can tell you in the case of St. David's, we have over 500 applications for housing repairs and counting. Right? The reality is we do not have the funds to address all 500. We probably only have the funds to address a fraction of that. And we can go on and on. If you go to St. George's Northeast, the applications are 300-400. If you take South St. George, the applications are significant. And I'm sure as reporters, if you drive around Grenada and you see the state of the houses, you would appreciate why that is the case. So that is the purpose for having the meeting. And we hope when we come out of that, that we can have a cadre of volunteers who will be prepared to assist, even if it's on weekends, whether we do maroons, as we used to do in the past, to assist some of the vulnerable persons, particularly senior citizens, women with children, whose houses would need repairs. Because it is one thing to provide the materials, which is what the minister was speaking about, and it's another thing to actually get the house repaired. And we do not want a situation where materials are provided and they sit under somebody's house and they just sit and rot away, or the rain washes it away. So we are really focused on ensuring that we actually can get the houses repaired. We will not be able to do that in a meaningful way without having, frankly, a significant cadre of volunteers and a significant cadre of persons who perhaps would be prepared to work not at market rates to assist us with this housing program. So that's the reason for having the meeting, and that's the kind of discussion we're hoping to have with the tradesmen in St. David. And then, assuming we can get some good traction, we would certainly want to replicate that throughout the length and breadth of Petite Martinique, Carriacou, and Grenada.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister, Minister Telesford. We now have a question from Nisha Paul. Nisha, the floor is yours.
Good morning to everyone. My first question is for the Housing Minister, Minister Telesford. In the context of the NIS, which is stated to be facing bankruptcy, and the recommendations which have been on the table for a long time, can you explain how the increase in the retirement age will enable or help in putting the NIS in a sustainable path? Is it a measure that will allow the NIS to generate more money? And can you give us a context of the net worth of the NIS? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Well, let me say, I, at this stage, will not be able to provide you with a net worth. I am not sure if Mike has that answer. If he does, he'll take up after. The retirement age, according to the, well, let me also state, even before I go further, that we are not saying that the NIS is facing bankruptcy. I don't think it is appropriate to label bankruptcy on the NIS at this stage. The NIS is managed well. It has a competent management and board of directors who are leading the institution properly. What we are seeing here is that there's some changes that has to be made to shape the organization in a particular way. But it is urgent. And because it is urgent, we must respond with some measure of urgency. The moving of the retirement age assists significantly the NIS in repositioning itself, because well, let me also state the movement of the retirement age, we know it's going to be something that is going to be a bit uncomfortable for some people, especially those who are just about to retire. The legislation will also provide for those who would accept what we would refer to as a reduced pension. Those who would retire at age 60 may have to get a certain small percentage of reduced pension, whether it's 0.5% or whatever that number is going to be, some small reduction in the actual pension payment. A scientific approach is being taken to evaluate and reposition the NIS into a state of strength to lengthen its life. The increasing of the retirement age assists significantly, but also what is critical is to address a number of people who are not currently paying NIS. For example, part of the legislative framework that has to be dealt with has to do with how do we treat with self-employed. A lot of self-employed people are non-compliant because it's either they don't have the time to pay on a monthly basis or they're not registered altogether. What we are trying to do is to ensure that everybody is brought under the umbrella of the NIS, being able to make the contribution. The self-employed people, for example, the amendment that is being proposed is that they can make annual payments as opposed to monthly payments, or pay as they so wish. Whatever payment they make for the year will be treated as their payment. If you wish to pay more, it's also better for you. Also, if you look at our system here in Grenada, the system compensates, I'm trying to be careful here, sort of compensates unemployment. Right? I don't want to name the programs specifically, but it sort of compensates and encourages people not to be gainfully employed. We must understand that being employed or creating economic activity is creating sustainability for the country. We have maybe about 65% or so of the population is youthful people under the age of 60, under the age of 35. 65% of the population. Yeah? It means, therefore, that a significant proportion of that would comprise the working force. Then if that is true, why are we here? A number of things. One, people are paid too low, so the contributions to the NIS is too small. Two, people are not registered and not making the contributions. For example, we've been promoting contract labor, and we're saying to those contractors, we call them contractors. Basically, when you look at it, they're actually employees. You're saying to them, you are responsible for your own NIS. You're working with government. You're responsible for your own NIS. That is encouraging non-compliance. So we have to take all of this from a holistic point of view. The ceiling that is placed right now of $5,000, is that sufficient? It's another question that we have to answer. So these are some of the deep analyses that has to be brought into account when we talk about the sustainability of the NIS. The NIS has competent staff, competent management, competent board. We, the political directorate or the legislators, need to give them the ammunition that is needed to strengthen their organization, and that is via the legislative framework. So I believe that's the best way I can answer that question in that context. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Minister Telesford. We now move on to Nancy Maguire. Nancy, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. Am I hearing all right?
Yes, we can hear you, Nancy. Thank you.
Thank you. Prime Minister, you had referred to the need for data on tradespersons. I'm wondering if there's any collaboration with TAMCC and persons that have graduated with the different qualifications there, and also the larger companies that do employ a lot of tradespersons to build up this database for you. And secondly, on the same issue, do we know the number of persons that are on that list requiring housing assistance and how many more we have? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Nancy. We intend to follow the hint you've given by, in fact, speaking with some of the larger construction firms, the education bodies like TAMCC and NULO, to really begin the process of having a comprehensive database for skills men and women, and to go further than just having a comprehensive database. Obviously, we need to know what the market needs and where we need to, from an education and vocational training point of view, focus our energy. So that is part of the reason for gathering the database, so that we can have a clear sense of what currently exists, what our needs are, and therefore where we need to put emphasis on from an investment and an education point of view. So that's part of what we intend to do. We do have data in terms of the number of persons who've applied for housing assistance and bathroom and toilet repair assistance. I don't have the data with me. I'm not sure if the minister has it with him, but I'm sure that's data that we can make available to the public in terms of just the numbers of persons who were applying.
For information purposes, the number of people who have applied for house repair and or construction is 1,800, and those for bathroom, toilet, just a little over 300 people so far. So those are the applications that are currently pending. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Honorable Prime Minister and Minister Telesford. We now move on to Linda Straker. Linda, the floor is yours.
Good morning to you and everyone. I have two questions presently, one for each minister. Can I ask it together or wait until I get an answer?
You can ask them together, Linda. Thank you.
Okay, right. My first question is to Minister Telesford. One of the justification given by the former administration to reduce wastage with regard to the bathroom and house repair program was the creating of or establishing this housing brigade grouping, which I understand from you this morning. Some people may come back and some people are not interested. You mentioned that an audit is now being done to determine the level of wastage. Can you tell us who is conducting this audit and what is the timeline for that audit? Timeline in terms of the period of years. The audit will cover from 2000 to 2021. That's what I'm inquiring about, and when it would be presented to the public. My question to the Prime Minister is the Supplementary Appropriation Act for retroactive payment for pension. Can you tell us when that will be taken to the Parliament and what type of changes has been made to the Cabinet of Ministers' salary and allowances? Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. The Department of Audit, that's the government auditors, they are the ones conducting the audit. And an audit of this nature usually spans a period, the last 5 years. So it spans a period of 5 years. And if there is something that really jumps out, a trend or something, then the auditors may choose to roll back the curtains a few years to see what is happening. But generally, an audit of this nature is 5 years. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Linda. The Finance Committee, which is the standing committee of the House of Parliament, met last Friday and considered the draft supplementary appropriations. The committee approved that, and we therefore expect that the bill for the supplementary appropriation to be laid before Parliament by the end of September, at least the House of Representatives first, and then we'd expect 7 days thereafter that would be considered by the Senate, the upper house. So all things being equal, I would expect that the bill should be passed by the, give or take, the 10th of October. The changes which have been made to ministers' salaries and allowances are, I would call two changes. One, there was a telephone allowance which has been discontinued. A telephone allowance which was a financial allowance. That has been discontinued because when we assumed office, it was clear that ministers were being provided with a cell phone at the expense of the government of Grenada, so there was no need to still have a fixed line telephone allowance, so we discontinued that. We also, well, we were advised that there was a quote-unquote free gas policy, which allowed, I am not clear whether it's ministers or MPs or both, to obtain gasoline or fuel from the central police station. There seem to be no controls in place, no written policy, rules or regulation governing it, and so we discontinued it, and instead we gave the ministers a $2,000 traveling allowance, which would allow them to, in fact, have gasoline and or a driver if they so choose. So those are the changes that have been made. And just to be clear, obviously, the Office of the Prime Minister, that traveling allowance does not apply to that office simply because state vehicles are provided for the Office of the Prime Minister.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you, Minister. MTV, the floor is yours. You may pose your two questions.
Thank you. Good morning to the Honorable Prime Minister, and good morning to Minister Telesford. My two questions. One question for Minister Telesford. You made mention of some of the recommendations that were made by the board in NIS. Can you tell me if the National Health Insurance falls under this? And my second question is in relation to the PURC. I know they said a review would be done soon on the legislation for the PURC, etc. How soon can we look forward to this being done?
I'm sorry, Donella, we were not able to hear your second question. Can you repeat, please?
Okay, my second question is on the PURC and the legislation that they have in place currently. I know the Prime Minister did say that a review should be done. I'm asking how soon would this review be done?
Okay, Donella, while Minister Telesford answers your first question, I'm going to ask if you can type your second question into the chat because you were able to hear? Okay, sorry, go ahead. Thank you.
I believe I heard both questions, so I'll repeat them. Donella, if I'm accurate, you tell me yes, please. The first question was whether the National Health Insurance aspect is part of the recommendations made by the board of NIS.
All right. The answer to that is no. That one is not considered in this particular draft. What was considered were just mainly legislative changes, urgent legislative changes. All right.
And I think the second question was how soon would the review of the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission Act be undertaken? The answer to that is we are beginning that process, so I expect between now and the end of October, November, that process should be completed.
Thank you, Prime Minister and Minister Telesford. We're going to take our final two questions from Milton Joy. Milton, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Actually, the name is Milton Coy. Glad to be here this morning. Although there weren't any specific issues dealing with Carriacou and Petit Martinique, I would like to find out really about two things. Well, probably I could ask them at the same time and wait for a response. The two areas are, is there any work, is there anything being done to, in regards to the Hillsborough Port? I know there was some clamoring in recent times and there were some promises made. So I'm just wanted to find out from the government standpoint, what's the status, where we at as far as the Hillsborough report is concerned. Probably as we are in Carriacou, I could also try and get some information regarding what's the status of local government that's been promised during the campaign. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Coyle, for both your questions, and apologies for addressing you as Joy. Well, let's say this, we are committed both to local government and we are committed to the need to have the port in Carriacou retrofitted and possibly expanded. We recognize that having appropriate infrastructure in Carriacou is critical for its development. And Hillsborough is the tongue of Carriacou, and you can't have a tongue without a port of entry. So we are committed to doing so, but I'm sure would appreciate the government has only been, the new administration has only been in power for the last 2.5 months. And when it comes to things like infrastructure work, if there was no budget for it in the middle of the budget cycle, for you to get to a point where you can do major infrastructure work, you actually need to be able to budget, plan, and eventually implement those things. So when it comes to major infrastructure work, that requires first for you to find the financing. You obviously have to have the concept designs, the architecture, the environmental impact assessment, etc., etc. So from that perspective, I would be honest to say I don't envisage that we would be in a position to have noticeable action with the Port of Hillsborough at least for another 12 months, because we would need to be able to budget for that. We need to be able to have the consultants, etc., retained. The Port Authority is going to have to provide its input on it so that we can get to the point of repairing the port and, if necessary, expanding it. And the same goes for local government. To some extent, it requires some consultation as well with the residents of Petit Martinique and Carriacou. But that is something we are committed to and will roll out as well. But I can't, at this point in time, give you a definitive timeline for it.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister. That brings us to the end of this morning's post-cabinet press briefing. I will give you all an opportunity to make any closing remarks. P.S. Sylvester, would you like to make any remarks?
Thank you, Terry. I was just here to answer any questions related to finance and to assist in the press conference. So I'm happy to be here. And of course, I think it was a press conference that provided valuable information to the public. We are going to, as the Prime Minister said, provide follow-up on the freight issue and as well as on the petrol tax, the cap. So by today or close of business tomorrow, we should have the information to provide guidance to the cabinet in terms of whether the cap remains or or we have, well, basically whether the petrol tax is removed. And so in terms of moving that process forward, of course, we have to get the SRNO in place to remove the petrol tax, and then the cap itself being removed to be able to effect the reduction in the price at the pump. Yeah.
Thank you, P.S. Sylvester.
P.S., did you want to clarify on the issue of how much, if any, the government prior? Because I had indicated, just for clarification, I had indicated that the government may not have collected any petrol tax for the year. But if that's not accurate, if you could just clarify that.
Yeah, thank you for that. So basically, when the cap was implemented in December of last year, and based on the price build-up, what you have is, in some cases, the government was giving up, $4, $5 of the $5.50. So we were actually, in fact, collecting some taxes. As of today's date, I think we'd have collected about 23 million of the budget of 60 thereabout. In some months in particular, we have not collected any petrol tax. And based on the projections that we have for the rest of the year, given that the cap will remain, the cap would be removed and that the petrol tax will be zeroed, we don't expect to collect any additional petrol tax in that regard.
Thank you, P.S. Sylvester. Minister Telesford, would you like to make any closing remarks?
Thank you. I just want to say to the general public, the applications are available. You can, that's for the housing units. You can collect at your nearest post office or revenue office, and also at the ministry right here, as well as the Housing Authority of Grenada. We wish you success those of you who are applying. I wish you the very best. Take care. Blessings.
Thank you, Minister Telesford. Prime Minister, the final word is yours.
Thank you, Xavier. I just want to, although we didn't address it in this press conference, but I want to remind particularly the micro, small, medium enterprise businesses in Grenada and persons wishing to start a business that the CES program is on. We launched it after the press conference, and we want to encourage persons to come in and apply. They can also apply online. And remember, if you have any questions, if you need any assistance, the CES Secretariat and its personnel are there to assist with helping persons to fill up the forms and with doing their business plans and so on, as the case may be, and also to provide technical assistance and training as well. So we really do want to encourage persons to come out and do so. I'm told that there's been a significant rush by persons to register business names at the company's registry. That's a good sign. We need more of that, because really the future of economic growth in Grenada lies in the hands of small and medium-sized businesses. So we're happy to provide the support, and we want to encourage people to continue doing so. And I would say this, even if you don't get through on this time, it's not a reason to give up or to quit. There are other avenues available. The Grenada Development Bank, for example, with its small business loan. GIDC also provides assistance, and we will certainly be continuing to look to get grant funding to specifically target small and medium-sized businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister. Our esteemed panel, to all our viewers, and of course to our media colleagues, thank you for your engagement. We appreciated you all joining us this morning, and until the next post-cabinet briefing, we look forward to seeing you again.